As we all know, Conquest is just a big old baby at heart. He's just misunderstood. But if we put that fact aside in just one episode, Conquest has managed to become one of the worst criminals in the Invincible universe. And yes, he's even worse than Omni-Man ever was, all in just one single episode. And if he does stand trial for his crimes, he's gonna need one hell of a lawyer. Starting off, let's set some basic ground rules. For a crime to count, it should have taken place on Earth only. I'm no expert, but I'm pretty sure the mass genocide of the Viltrumites he caused isn't really Earth's problem. Secondly, no mass murder charges. Those are no fun when you're trying to accurately find the sentence someone like Conquest should be getting, especially when he's practically an immortal, unkillable Viltrumite. Finally, Illinois doesn't follow capital punishment anymore, meaning no more death penalties. But for the sake of this video, let's assume they decide to reinstate that specifically for Conquest. But without further ado, let's get started. Coercion, 10 years. This is blatant coercion. If Mark doesn't do what Conquest says, he's more than likely going to hurt him. This carries a maximum sentence of 10 years, and seeing as he goes on to carry out his threat, that's probably what he'll be sentenced to. Criminal damage to property and manslaughter, 115 years plus a $75,000 fine. At least 20 people ended up getting unalived here, not considering how many more were injured from the flying glass and the shockwave that came about because of their cool little fist pump. This is involuntary manslaughter, carrying a charge of 5 years per count in Chicago. If we take 20 people killed at the minimum, that's over 100 years already. Considering all these buildings being destroyed, which we see 3 getting the glass blown out, we could consider this as a Class 3 felony property damage at the minimum, carrying a prison sentence between 2 to 5 years and a $25,000 fine per charge in Chicago. Attempted murder, 20 years. This is attempted murder. Plain and simple. In Chicago, that's a Class X felony, carrying a sentence of 20 years. Grievous bodily harmed, GBH, 30 years. This brutal punch seems pretty bad, and gets even worse when Mark starts to cough and spit out a concerning amount of blood. This amounts to GBH, or grievous bodily harm, where in Chicago, if the offender has an extending record, the charge can land them up to 30 years in prison. Considering everything that Conquest has done so far, I'd say it's not too far-fetched that he'd get the maximum sentence. First-degree murder, plus criminal damage to property, and attempted murder. 1 death penalty / capital punishment, 5,000 life sentences, 525 years, and $7.5 billion fine. Now, this island has tons of skyscrapers, and though a lot of people have been evacuated, as we saw in the previous clips, there's still quite a lot of people. Seriously though, who would stay in Chicago after seeing like 4 different Invincibles decimate the city? Anywho, the average population of the city, after evacuation, would still have around 5,000 people left. While this could be considered manslaughter, Conquest knew what he was doing. I mean, the dude was literally plummeting from the sky, and he had all the time in the world to stop it, considering that the Viltrumites can move through space freely. Kinda disobeys the laws of physics, but it's also definitely disobeys several state laws too. First degree murder to be specific, and in this case, it would lead him to be sentenced to death, and 1 life sentence per death. We end up with 5,000 life sentences. This would land Conquest with an attempted murder against Mark II, giving him a life imprisonment, seeing that this is a repeat offense. Not forgetting about the damage he caused, with the amount of damage he caused, it would land him with a sentence of 525 years in jail, and considering it will take at least 500 million to build a skyscraper, he's in for a hell of a fine. Counting at least 11 huge skyscrapers, which would cost the $500 million each, he would owe at least $7.5 billion with everything else in fines. Criminal damage to property plus second degree murder times 2,500, 50,000, 45 years plus $2 billion. There were 3 skyscrapers completely wrecked after he threw Mark through them. This is also in a different part of the city, so it's not clear if those skyscrapers had people in them. There were people on the ground when Mark fell into the oil tanker, but they may have just been stragglers. Although, later on, we see people fall out of these skyscrapers as Mark gets dragged through them. This would indicate that there was still a considerable amount of people in these buildings. Considering that the average skyscraper skyscraper would have at least 4,000 to 5,000 people in it. Even if we take half of that, this would add on 20 years per count for second-degree murder. Murder without premeditation or planning. 2,500 multiplied by 20, a pretty big number. He also served 15 years per count of property damage. GBH on a minor. Life imprisonment. Oliver attacking Conquest here would be under the protection of defense of others, seeing that he was only protecting Mark from the attack. Afterwards, however, he had the duty to retreat, which he did not do so, technically making this self-defense on Conquest's part, seeing as Oliver was rushing him. But the fact that Conquest went ahead and attempted to murder Oliver later on, we can count this as GBH on a minor. It means another life sentence. Involuntary manslaughter times 2, plus criminal damage to property, 25 years plus $150,000. Dragging Mark through these buildings is yet again criminal damage to property, though less this time, only landing Conquest with 15 years in prison and a $100,000 fine. The poor guy falling at the end though, that would be involuntary manslaughter, and another 5 years and another $25,000 in fines. Oh, you hear that? That's the sound of another involuntary manslaughter charge, plus 5 years and $25,000. GBH on a minor, 2 life sentences plus a $100,000 fine. Another GBH on a minor. Being a second offense, this would probably be a harsher sentence and a little more property damage. Attempted murder with GBH. Death plus 2 life sentences. This level of attempted murder would probably land Conquest with the death penalty, especially with his comments during the act, showing particularly 0 chance at reformation. It would also land him with at least 2 life sentences, seeing as the degree to which Conquest carries the act out, as well as the fact that it was a minor. It wouldn't be far-fetched to assume this was what a jury would decide. Deadly assault plus criminal damage to property, 8 years plus a $50,000 fine. Hitting Mark in the head here would be counted as a deadly assault, though this punch would kill any normal human. Conquest knows how powerful Mark is, and that he wouldn't die to a simple punch like that. This would give him 3 years in prison with a $25,000 fine. Oh, the property damage would also land him 5 years in prison with another $25,000 fine. Second degree murder plus criminal damage to property, 20,000, 10 years plus 50,000. There were at least 5,000 people here who died to Conquest, dragging Mark through them. This would count as a second degree murder once again. This adds 20 years per count as usual. He also causes a significant amount of property damage, adding 5 years per count and a $25,000 fine. GBH on a minor plus aggravated assault, 3 years plus 3 life sentences plus death plus $25,000. Him rushing towards Eve would be considered aggravated assault, and subsequently destroying Mark's leg would be grievous bodily harm on a minor. Aggravated assault would carry 3 years and a $25,000 fine, while the GBH on a minor in his third offense of the same nature, likely giving him another death penalty with 3 more life imprisonments. First degree murder, life in prison plus death penalty. Eve technically dies here, though she comes back to life. That's through her awakened powers. No human walks away from this. The degree of a murder in this case would land Conquest with a life sentence, and more than likely the death penalty. Unfortunately for Conquest, Mark delivers him the death penalty not long after, before Cecil puts him on payroll, of course. Before we get into the charges, there's a few key things to keep in mind. A life sentence is 25 years, so each count is 25 years in prison. That's how it's possible for people to be charged with multiple life sentences. All these charges are all also estimates based on Illinois state law and sentencing procedures, so it may not be 100% accurate. All in all, Conquest would face the following charges: coercion, 10 years, criminal damage to property, 620 years, and over $15 billion in fines and restitution. Deadly assault, 3 years and $25,000. Manslaughter, 110 years and $100,000 in fines. Attempted murder, 20 years and 2 life sentences. Grievous bodily harm on a minor, 30 years, 6 life sentences, and death. First degree murder, death, 5,001 life sentences. Second degree murder, 20,000, 10 years. Final judgment, total years, 20,803 years. Total life sentences, 5,009 life sentences. Total fines, $15,125,000,000. Total death sentences, 2. If we convert the life sentences into years served, it would be 125,225. Adding that to the total years, Conquest is spending a lot of time in prison, 150,000 years in prison.